For decades, the Greek city-states bled each other dry in endless civil wars. While they fought among themselves, they lived entirely in the shadow of the era's undisputed superpower, the sprawling Persian Empire. But to the north, a mountainous kingdom the Greeks considered a backwater was quietly building a military machine. Under King Philip II, Macedonia transformed into a disciplined, formidable power. Philip's true innovation lay in his infantry reforms. He armed his men with the sarissa, a massive 18-foot pike, twice the length of a standard Greek spear. Grouped tightly together in a phalanx, his soldiers presented an impenetrable wall of iron spear tips. Philip designed this force with one goal: an invasion to conquer Persia. But before he could launch his campaign, he was assassinated by his own bodyguard. The most advanced army in the world suddenly fell into the hands of his untested 20-year-old son, Alexander. Alexander didn't hesitate. To secure his throne, he immediately ordered the execution of potential rivals and marched south to crush any Greek city-states thinking of rebelling against Macedonian rule. With his home front pacified, he aimed his father's weapon at its intended target. In the spring of 334 BC, Alexander led 40,000 men across the Hellespont, the narrow strait separating Europe from Asia Minor. This map shows the sheer audacity of the campaign. Alexander was pitting a regional kingdom against a continent-spanning empire that massively outnumbered them in both wealth and available manpower. The Persian governors met him at the river Granicus. Instead of a cautious engagement, Alexander personally led a shock cavalry charge across the water, plunging straight into the thickest part of the enemy lines. It was highly reckless, almost costing him his life, but the gamble paid off. By fighting and bleeding alongside his men, Alexander proved he was a deeply capable tactician, willing to share their extreme risks. That courage bought him the absolute fanatical loyalty of his entire army. 18 months later, the Macedonian forces faced a critical trap. The Persian king, Darius III, maneuvered a massive army behind Alexander, pinning him down at a place called Issus. Looking at this tactical map of Issus, we can see exactly how Alexander solved the numbers problem. He anchored his forces in a narrow choke point between steep mountain slopes and the sea. He locked his phalanx across this bottleneck, physically preventing the massive Persian army from flanking him. With the Persian numbers neutralized, Alexander saw an opening. He personally took command of his elite companion cavalry, breaking off from the right wing and driving a deep wedge straight into the heavily guarded Persian center. The ferocity of the charge was aimed directly at King Darius. Rather than face the advancing Macedonians, the great king panicked and fled the battlefield in his royal chariot, triggering a chaotic collapse of his entire army. Alexander repeated this aggressive violence at Gaugamela. Facing an army of up to 80,000 men, he executed a brilliant encirclement trap to draw their center apart, allowing him to shatter the Persian lines and break their military machine. By systematically dismantling the most powerful military state on Earth, Alexander ascended to rule the known world. But with no external enemies left to conquer, the most severe threats to his reign began to surface from within his own camp. Rather than stopping to govern his new territories, Alexander pushed his exhausted men further east, deep into the harsh, isolating terrain of modern-day Afghanistan, bogging them down in brutal guerrilla warfare against local tribes. As the geography changed, so did the king. Alexander began dressing in the traditional robes of the defeated Persian court, adopting the exact customs his Macedonian veterans viewed as decadent. The breaking point came when Alexander demanded his soldiers perform proskynesis, a Persian ritual requiring subjects to prostrate themselves on the floor before the king. To the Greeks, this crossed a severe religious line, as such reverence was strictly reserved for the gods. Alexander's growing paranoia and arrogance led to fatal consequences. During a furious, drunken argument, he impulsively killed Clitus the Black, a veteran general who had saved Alexander's life at his very first battle. The violence then turned systemic. Uncovering rumors of assassination plots, Alexander ruthlessly purged his own high command. He tortured and executed Philotas, the commander of his companion cavalry, and then ordered the assassination of Philotas's father, Parmenion. The Macedonian liberator who set out to free the Greek world, had morphed into an absolute paranoid tyrant, the exact kind of autocrat his army had originally marched across the continent to destroy. Alexander's ambition finally collided with physical reality at the Beas River in modern India. According to ancient Greek geographers, this watercourse marked the physical edge of the world. For his men, it marked their absolute limit. They had marched thousands of miles and fought countless battles. They had not seen their homes in 8 years. Facing rumors of gigantic Indian armies waiting with war elephants just across the river, the undefeated Macedonian war machine ground to a halt. The soldiers openly mutinied, refusing to take another step east, and a furious Alexander was forced to turn back. The return journey was punishing. Alexander led his remaining forces across land through the brutal Gedrosian desert. Extreme heat and severe shortages of food and water led to agonizing starvation and widespread death among the troops. In the sands of southern Pakistan, the sheer scale of losses revealed a hard reality. Thousands of soldiers perished from heat and thirst, proving that a leader's ambition ultimately ends where his men's physical endurance breaks. Returning to Babylon, the administrative heart of his fragile territory, Alexander made desperate attempts to artificially fuse his newly conquered populations together. He arranged massive weddings between his top Macedonian officers and Persian noblewomen. But before these policies could take root, his momentum stopped completely. While planning a new naval campaign into Arabia, Alexander developed a severe fever and died within days. He was just 32 years old. Because his territory was held together solely by his personal brilliance and the weight of his name, it instantly fractured. Without a clear heir, his top generals immediately turned on each other, tearing the empire apart in the bloody wars of the successors. The decade of conquest triggered the Hellenistic Age, a period defined by the fusion of Greek science, art, and philosophy with local Eastern traditions. Alexander the Great failed to build a lasting political state, but in a single decade, his pursuit of glory integrated the Mediterranean and the East, ensuring his ideas outlived the empire that carried them.